From classrooms to careers, bright futures are near as K-12 and beyond, empowering educators right here. Tune in to AUK 98.7 where excellence begins.
This is Tom Hayes at the American University of Kurdistan. Today we're continuing our coverage of the K through 12 and beyond Achieving Educational Excellence Conference that's being sponsored by the university and organized by Kappa. I have in our studio today Dr. Zana Ibrahim, who is the task force the national task force chairperson for the K through 19 in Kurdistan. Dr. Zana, first of all, I want to welcome you to the studio today. I want to say how glad and happy we are that you're here with us today. And we're just going to ask you a few questions about, first of all, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your educational background maybe, and why you think this conference here at the American University is important for Kurdistan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate the American University of Kurdistan, Dahok, for inviting me to facilitate one of the workshops of this conference today. Now, starting with a little bit about myself, I'm a native of Kurdistan. I was born and bred in Erbil. I did my education all here in Kurdistan. I graduated from the Salahuddin University, English major, and then I went to the U.S. I did a master's in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I then did a PhD in applied linguistics from the University of Nottingham, United Kingdom. Ever since, I've been teaching English, but also heavily involved in education, preparing pre-service teachers in English, but also other fields. I've had an interest in education for many years. So, to me, having this conference here is really important. It's one of its kind, to be honest, because usually in research, in education, we talk about this wide but visible gap between research and pedagogy, research and practice. Usually researchers produce research that's not usually consumed by practitioners. This conference here is an attempt to bridge to fill this gap that's there. And this is especially important in the context of Kurdistan and the education system in Kurdistan here. The pre-service teacher training programs do not necessarily equip all teachers with the challenges that they will face after graduation when they start teaching as in-service teachers. I commend the university for conducting and organizing this conference today.
Okay. I wanted to ask you touched on the subject of education in Kurdistan in terms of teacher education. Mm-hmm. Where are the areas where we need to make improvements in teacher education in Kurdistan?
I think one of the areas that has been overlooked in the pre-education or the pre-service education programs here in Kurdistan is the issue of learners with different skills, different abilities, different backgrounds and motivations. It's always been traditionally the case that we look at learners as homogeneous, as coming from the same background, the same motivation, the same learning speed, the same learning style, which is obviously not the case. No two students learn the same way. No two students have the same motivation, desire, interest in learning. And as such, our teaching methodology should be as such where we look at students as different, because people are different, whether it be they're learners, individuals. After all, we have different motivations, different goals, different purposes, and I think this is quite paramount that we tackle in our education system, that teachers are prepared for the realities that they're facing after graduation when they go to classroom. One of the participants of my workshop today asked me a question about how to deal with learners or students with learning disability. I think that's something that's completely historically been absent in our education system. And that could be, there could be a large percentage of learners with learning disabilities. We need to have, in our education system, we need to have a systematic way of dealing with those types of learners. I think starting from this, if we understand the realities of individual learners as individual profiles, then we'll make a good start.
Okay. A lot of people I've heard in the educational community here, they say that they're not funded well enough in Kurdistan, and I'm sure that's true. It's true in a lot of countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So what kinds of things can they do to improve the education system in Kurdistan that don't cost much money or no money?
I think to start with, we need to invite people who are interested in teaching intrinsically to become teachers. One of the things that in our task force that we discuss in our task force is how teachers become teachers in the first place. With the admission system that we have, by that I mean admissions to university programs, teachers might become teachers not because they're interested in teaching, but because that's the average that they got from their 12th grade exam. We need to change that, first of all. We need to make sure that teachers are voluntarily into teaching. Teaching is an interest. To me, teaching is a hobby before being a profession. Now, the fact that there's a large audience, there's a large number of in-service teachers attending this conference today, testifies to the fact that teachers are actually interested in improving. There are teachers who are interested in learning more about how to make a difference in their students' lives. We need to invest on that premise and invite people who are interested in teaching. That doesn't cost any money. We're not, we're not making any changes to the way we pay teachers. We just need to have teachers who are into teaching, who are interested in teaching, and then make more things available to them, such as professional development opportunities, conferences of this type. As the majority of the participants are in-service teachers. I think more and more institutions in Kurdistan can take part in raising the level of teaching proficiency by having such events.
You mentioned conferences as being vital or essential to doing some of these things that would be relatively cost-free to do. That's one thing we've done here at the American University of Kurdistan, as you well know. Are there other things that we as an institution could do that would assist education in Kurdistan, K through 12 education specifically?
Yes. Now, conferences are great. We bring together people of expertise, but also people who are interested to learn more. But there are other ways that your university or other universities can make a difference, and that's by first of all contributing to the body of research, to the body of knowledge that's on education and education issues in Kurdistan. Every year, hundreds and probably thousands of students write dissertations and theses on key education issues in Kurdistan, but they don't end up being shared with in-service teachers. I think there should be closer collaboration between institutions such as the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education in sharing that body of knowledge that's produced every year. Fortunately, most of the topics and titles that the master students, PhD students work on are actually on key issues in Kurdistan specific to this context. We could ask teachers to benefit from the body of knowledge that's produced elsewhere, but each context has its own peculiar issues and challenges. The topic that I talked about today was especially new to the majority of the audience, the people in the audience, and that's teaching to different levels, different abilities of students and learners. We could share that body of knowledge with in-service teachers, and that's relatively cost-free as well. Other things that universities and higher education institutions could do is, for example, allowing in-service teachers to take a course, to take a master's course, to take a professional course, or maybe just a few days workshop on effective and novel ways of teaching and helping students learn.
I remember before we started the interview, you were telling me that you had already spoken, I think, for 90 minutes about mixed abilities in the
Correct.
workshop. And I don't want to force you to do that again, but I was wondering if maybe you might be able to go over the key points from your workshop that you
Sure.
would like for educators to know about here in
Right.
Kurdistan.
Now, historically, teachers have been told to teach to the average learner. And by doing so, they're taking a moderate approach. But the problem with this approach is that we have a large number of lower level learners and more advanced or accelerated learners who are completely overlooked. What we need to be doing, though, instead, is to address every single learner as a unique and individual learner. Unfortunately, as I say, we're not doing that right now, not only in our teaching, but in our assessment as well. So the expectations are you need to achieve those goals, those learning goals by the end of your course, by the end of your session, by the end of your lesson, and that's the same for everybody. So instead of teaching only to the average learner, we need to scaffold the students who are below the average learner. These students might need more time. They might be different in their learning style. They might be different in their learning pace. But after all, they have all the right to be taught the way we teach average learners. There are students who are above the average learner. There are students who are interested in learning in a faster way, in a quicker way. Probably they're more talented than other students. We need to have a way and a mechanism to incorporate those needs into our education system. I talked about key principles of doing this, including using variety. Teachers have to have a menu of activities rather than just one single activity to be done by every student. The other thing that I talked about was assessment. Students might learn differently, but they might want to showcase this performance, this learning in a different way. A student could be good at writing, but another student might want to achieve or showcase that achievement through verbal communication, through presentation, through other methods. So we need to have a varied mechanism of teaching, but also, and probably more importantly, in assessment. I talked about those principles, and also we did that together with teachers, with the in-service teachers, through a number of activities throughout the workshops.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I wanted to ask you just one more question before we wrap up, and that was about the work of the National Task Force that you're on, the K through 19 Task Force. I believe you're the chairman, right?
I'm just a member of that.
Okay, you're a
force.
member of it. Can you tell us a little bit about the work of the task force?
This task force has been there for over 3 years now, and the purpose of this is to suggest reform in the education system of Kurdistan and the region as a whole. But the purpose, the goal of the task force is to find or suggest ways through which we take our education system forward. Now, almost everybody in this country might complain about the education system, whether it be students, teachers, parents, policymakers.
I think that's true everywhere.
We, through that task force, a number of experts have come together, and convene regularly and ask or invite researchers in the field of education to suggest ways that we can change the status quo. I will give you a couple of examples. First of all, we talked about the university admission system. Currently, students of high schools need to pass a traditional assessment in grade 12, and through that mechanism they get to choose the program of study that they will be majoring in at the university. However, that might not be the best way of enrolling students into programs. As I said, students should be able to enroll in a program of their interest, possibly regardless, or maybe with little regard to how they did in high school. So we've been looking into a new way of the university admission system, one which is more in line with best practices elsewhere, not only in the region. We've also looked into the issue of TVET, that's technical and vocational education. In this country, we have a shortage of skills, but we have an abundance of degrees. We need to tackle that. We need to have locally produced skills that are required, that are on demand in this country, and be less focused on giving students degrees.
Okay, just one last question, real quick, if I could. I was just wondering if you have any advice that you would like to give to budding educators, people who are interested in going into the education field. Do you have any advice that you could give them?
My advice would be, education is about giving, or giving back to community. It really requires from the educator to be passionate about making changes to people's lives. My advice would be to only go for education as a profession if you like to make changes to people's lives, if you like to help people to become a better version of themselves, if you like to help the new generation to make a difference in this country.
Dr. Zana, I want to thank you very much for coming in for an interview with us today, and much success in the conference today and in your other endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've been listening to K-12 and Beyond, where teaching meets tomorrow. Keep aiming for excellence only on AUK 98.7.